Let's break it down with John Breech from the Pick Six podcast. It does not appear as though Jameis is quite ready to return. Saints saying that it is a game-time decision between he and Dalton, but reports that Dalton is going to get the start. How do you see the quarterback situation playing out tonight, John, with Taysom Hill obviously in the mix as well?
Yeah, Chris, it does feel like that the Saints are going to go with Dalton. He was the only quarterback who fully participated in practice on Wednesday. You don't want to rush Jameis Winston back on a short week when he only has 3 days. So I think because of the quick turnaround, Dalton is the quarterback that makes sense here. And to be honest, I think the coaching staff actually prefers Andy Dalton. Yes, he is more conservative when it comes to throwing passes than Jameis Winston is. But you look at what Jameis Winston did early in the season. He threw 5 interceptions in just 3 weeks. He was starting to turn back into 2019 Jameis Winston, who threw 30 interceptions with the Buccaneers. And then you look at what Andy Dalton has done, and he hasn't put up great numbers. They're not eye-popping numbers, but he's kept the Saints offense moving. They're averaging 30 points per game in 3 games with Andy Dalton. And if you're Dennis Allen, you're thinking, all right, 30 points a game should be enough to win us a few games. So let's keep Andy Dalton in there. So I think we'll see a lot of Dalton tonight. And if the Saints beat the Cardinals, I think we'll see a lot of Dalton in Week 8.
What kind of challenges, though, is Dalton going to have tonight without Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry, who have both been ruled out of this game already?
Yeah, I think one upside for Andy Dalton is that he has already had to deal with this. We saw on Sunday there was no Michael Thomas. There was no Jarvis Landry. He didn't even have Chris Olave, who will be out there for this Thursday night game. And it's really clear what the Saints have been trying to do with all of those guys out is they kind of turn to Alvin Kamara and say, all right, man, you are going to have to carry the team. So he's gotten, I think, average 20 carries per game in his 2 games with Andy Dalton. He's been a top target of Dalton, so they love to go to the ground with all their receivers out. But again, Dalton will have Chris Olave out there, who he did not have on Sunday. So I think the Saints offense could surprise some people tonight despite those injuries.
Okay, Cardinals would really like to surprise some people with a good offensive performance. They have struggled mightily, especially the last couple of weeks, scoring just 13 points per game over those last 2 games. Hollywood Brown out for at least a month, but they are going to have DeAndre Hopkins back. What is he going to do to help this offense?
Yeah, you look at the Cardinals, they reached rock bottom on Sunday against the Seahawks. The Seahawks were giving up the most yards in the NFL, the most points, the worst defense, and the Cardinals couldn't even score 10 points. And so this is kind of the game I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray have had circled on their calendar, thinking, oh my gosh, I don't care how bad our offense is. We are going to be good in Week 7 because we get DeAndre Hopkins back. And that has been a guy who's been an offensive spark for this Arizona team. They average 8 points more per game when DeAndre Hopkins is out there. They win more games when DeAndre Hopkins is out there. Kyler Murray is a better quarterback when DeAndre Hopkins is out there. So this should be the offensive spark they need. And yes, Marquise Brown is out, but they did just make the trade for Robbie Anderson. And then obviously with Hopkins in there, I think we could see Kyler Murray have one of his biggest games of the season.
Both of these teams in similar situations, given that they're in winnable divisions as it looks right now. Not a single team in either division is above 500. Both teams just a game out of first, despite being under 500, 2-4. If you had to pick one team with the better upside of making it to the postseason, which team would that be and why?
I think I would absolutely have to go with the Saints here, and that's because I think they're in an easier division. Now, I know that every team in the NFC West is 3-3 except for the Cardinals, but you look at the Rams, it feels like they're eventually going to turn things around. The 49ers are just dealing with tons of injuries. Eventually, everyone's going to get healed up, and that is going to be a really good team. And then the Seahawks have surprised some people. But you look at the NFC South, it's kind of a disaster right now. We don't know what's going on with Tom Brady. He looks disinterested out there. The Falcons have surprised some people, but they don't feel like a great team. And then the Panthers aren't going anywhere. They're in the basement of the division. So if you're the Saints, you feel like you really only have to compete with 2 teams. So if I had to pick one of those, the Cardinals and the Saints, to maybe make a run at winning the division, I think I would go with New Orleans.
John, let's get to your picks and props tonight. We know you're always good for a kicker prop, but you also think that Alvin Kamara might have a big night as well.
Well, I thought you guys were going to kick me off HQ if I only showed up with kicker props.
We were.
So I do have a Kamara prop ready to go. You know what? I have 2 Kamara props that I really like. Number 1, over 4.5 receptions against Arizona. Number 2, over 99.5 combined rushing and receiving yards. And the reason I like these is because Andy Dalton is likely going to be the starter. When he is the starting quarterback, the game plan is simple. You go through Alvin Kamara, you get him the ball as often as possible. Kamara started 2 games this season with Andy Dalton. He had 6 catches in both games. Obviously, if he hits 6 catches again tonight, that hits your over on the 4.5. Also with Dalton, he has been putting up, Kamara has just huge numbers. He had 194 combined rushing and receiving yards in his first game with Andy Dalton. He had 124 in his second game with Andy Dalton. And all you need here is for him to get over 100, which I think he can do with the Cardinals. And then, obviously, the kicking prop. I like Will Lutz to go over 6.5 points. Look, Andy Dalton might not be the best quarterback, but what he's done since he's been starting is he's gotten the Saints in situations where they can score points. And we have seen Will Lutz go over this 6.5 number in 2 of his 3 games with Andy Dalton. And the only reason that third game didn't go over is because he double doinked a 61-yard field goal on the final play in London against the Vikings. If that kick somehow goes in, Lutz goes over again. So I like Lutz to get at least 2 field goal attempts and 1 or 2 extra points. So I think he'll get 7, 8, 9 points and hit the over on the 6.5.
Riding Lutz and Kamara tonight. Which team are you backing with the Cardinals at home and 2.5-point favorites?
I have the Saints with the props, but I think I like the Cardinals here. And there's just too many injuries that New Orleans is dealing with right now between the receivers. Now we have injuries on the offensive line, and obviously Marshawn Lattimore being out is huge since we're going to see DeAndre Hopkins back on the field. And just because the Saints are so beat up, I think that DeAndre Hopkins is going to give the Cardinals that little spark they need to end this 8-game home losing streak. They haven't won at home. It's almost been a full calendar year. I think they end the streak tonight.
Yeah, that is crazy. 8 straight at home for Arizona. We saw last week they didn't play well on the road either in Seattle, but Breech thinks they're going to turn it around tonight, at least for a game. Let's recap the picks from Breech. He does like the Cardinals minus 2.5, but a few Saints props. Kamara over 4.5 receptions, and to get 100 total yards from scrimmage. That's scrimmage yards there, over 99.5. Will Lutz over 6.5 points.